Hey, Future Lawyer. Welcome to the LSAT Simplified podcast presented by Hey Future Lawyer, where we talk about all things LSAT, law school admissions, and otherwise. If you want to check out our free LSAT course, go to heyfuturelawyer.com to sign up for a free account today. Alrighty, cool. Welcome back, everyone. So a few news points before we get going. First off, we have a free session on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. To attend, all you need is a free session, or not a free session, a free account on our website, and then you can go to the calendar tab. If you can't find it, quit now. So it's fairly straightforward. Second, we have our October group starting next week. So if you want to hop in, check out the website. You can access that with either a platinum subscription or by a one-time purchase. And yeah, that's basically all we have going on at Hey Future Lawyer. Madeline is back, so we're going to get to hear about week 4 of law school and see how that's going. So I guess since we've last talked, 2 weeks in, you were talking about how easy law school is compared to the internet, I guess, perception. Where are you at with law school?
Well, I wouldn't say that's a bit hyperbolic. I wouldn't say it was extremely easy, but I get what you're saying, like relative to, or I think it's more so that the internet really builds it up to be this like completely like huge obstacle. Um, Last week was actually pretty chill. Week 3, last week I actually thought was probably the easiest one. This week less chill. I feel like the biggest thing I'm realizing is like it's just going to be cyclical, which that's how most things go anyway. There's going to be busier weeks, there's going to be slower weeks. And a big thing too is there's no there's no end point. Like it just I'll finish something for one day and my reward is the next day's stuff. So I think just kind of keeping that momentum and stamina with with studying, with reading, with just putting in that work is not a challenge, but it's just something that I guess it is what it is. Law school is definitely, I think, so far at least, my impression is that it's more of a marathon than a sprint. But so I was studying for the LSAT, so I was prepared.
Yeah, and so is life for all you listening. It
Yeah,
never, there
yeah.
will always be things to do. That while you were mentioning that, that made me think of something. Because last night, my wife went to The Sound of Music. It's in theater, so she went with two of her friends. And one of her friends is a second year associate at a big law firm. And at intermission, because it's such a long movie, they have an intermission. She checked her phone. This is at like 10 p.m., by the way, on a Wednesday. And there was some document that she had to go work on. So she had to leave at intermission to go work. So I just thought that was a worthwhile anecdote for all of you thinking about going into big law, that like you are always on call and they own you, and your little movie night can easily get ruined, even if you have intended to do that. And further, it's 10 p.m. Like it could have been bedtime in another life too. So it's
Yeah.
anyways, hopefully law school has been better than that. Is it still roughly, are you able to segregate what you need to do for law school versus personal obligations and all that good
Oh,
stuff?
yeah, yeah. I think, and for example, like, like I think, like one thing, for example, I was telling you before we were recording, we had like a memo draft that was due last night, at midnight, and I wrote most of it Friday and Monday because I was not trying to do it, 11th hour. Um, and I remember Monday I had put my kids to bed, I'd gone a little bit of a walk. It was like 9:30, and normally that's when I just like to go to bed, but I was like, no, I'm gonna, push myself to get a couple more paragraphs in with this memo so that I can just wrap it up the next morning. But all this to say, like, ooh, I pushed myself. I had to stay up an extra 30 minutes, 45 minutes so hard. That really wasn't that huge of a sacrifice. I didn't have to do it. I could have just waited until, last night at 11 p.m. But um, no, I don't really feel like it's been too difficult to manage. Again, the biggest sacrifice I've probably made is just having to stay up a little bit later than I typically would ideally like to, but nothing that's like a huge sacrifice or a huge hardship, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for what it's worth, I think this just speaks to everyone is always going to complain, and you can always just make excuses for your life if you want.
Yeah.
They're always there for literally all of us as humans on planet Earth. And so you just have to decide, like, are you going to let those be reasons that prevent you from doing what needs to get done, which for most of you listening is probably the LSAT. I can't imagine you're listening. I mean, you could be listening for other reasons, but no matter where you are, you have something that needs to get done. For most of you, it is the test. Are you studying today? And if you're not, how are you using your time? Like, what's your screen time like? If I mean the amount of people that complain about like I can't study for the LSAT for an hour or 2 hours a day, and I believe that for a few people, but for like 99% of our American population, I just cannot. It's like, really, you have like, please tell me you haven't watched a show on Netflix for the past 6 months, because if you have, you have time, and yet people will be caught up, they'll be scrolling on TikTok, and yet the LSAT's not getting done. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, as you know, in the moment I was like mildly annoyed that I was like, I'm gonna, stay up a little bit and I put in like maybe 30, 45 minutes Monday night. But then come last night when I was ready to submit the document, it was so much easier because I just had to kind of look over and edit it. I didn't really have to produce the thing. And I think made, hopefully, we'll see the quality of the output better. So it was worth just, just gotta show up, just gotta do it. That's people ask me, I've had people ask me like, oh, how do you, we may have talked about this last time, but how do you manage, family and all this stuff? I'm like, you just do it. I don't know. It's gotta get done. So we just, buck up and do it.
Yeah, well, I think we as humans, we're very soft on ourselves. You can always find an excuse. And I mean, I'm
Hmm.
not saying I'm immune to this. I do it too. But it's
Hmm.
also like, I try not to give myself the lies of like, oh, I really couldn't have gotten that done. It's like, I could have, I chose not to. And that's my choice, which like, you live with it. It's, I guess, irritating for me as an LSAT person when I see people make the choice and then not want to live with the consequences. Because you can make whatever choices you want, but you make your
Hmm.
bet. Like, if you want a 170 LSAT, outside true intellectual deficiencies, I don't see why you can't get there. That does mean it might mean studying consistently every day for the next year. Like that might be what's in front of you. But if you do that, you will likely get there. And I think there's also a lot of people that are overly generous in their description of their effort and say how long they've studied and how consistently and how much effort they put in. And I would just say, naturally, your inclination is to believe people. I started that way when I teach LSAT. I will say, as like pro LSAT teacher for the past 5 years now, my bullshit detector, or not bullshit, but like my skepticism has gone through the roof. I just do not believe that people do what they say they do, which doesn't mean that everyone's lying, but I've just like now that we have actual data, and I've mentioned this to you many times on how our site is used, I can see how many people log in day by day. I can see how much time they're spending, what effort they're doing, and it's not what people say they do, which is also like my group of kiddos where I'm constantly yelling at them about consistency and how it's so important. I send them a daily email. So like I'm really up in their business telling them to study. And even still, people just do not do it for whatever reason. So with that, I am curious. So it is September 18th, which means we're almost through the first month of law school admissions. LSAC has not released the number of applicants thus far. If you go to they have a web page where they display how many applicants there's been year to date, and they haven't updated that to be this cycle yet, which is annoying. But nonetheless, there is some subtle data. So the one data point I wanted to hit on is that Belmont, which is a school in Tennessee, I believe, released that their applications are up 50% year over year. So in 2025, they're up. What is that? Like there's three applications for every two there were last year. Is that what 50% means? I mean, I'm in this for a reason. There's a reason I'm not a math person, but is that your interpretation of
Up
50%?
50%. So yeah, like however many people applied last year from, is it by this time or total or whatever, or whatever
Um,
like
yeah, I think
the
like year to
parameter.
date.
Yeah. That it's half of that amount you add it. That's 50%.
Okay, yeah, so three over two. Sorry, I'm not a math person. So if they had 1,000 last year, they would have had 1,500 thus far.
I think the takeaway is it's a statistically noteworthy increase.
Yeah, I guess initially, do you have any thoughts on such an increase?
Well, it's curious. I'm curious to see if how that might compare to other schools. I wonder how much of it is just a general increase in people applying to law school generally. How much of it is an increase in people applying specifically to Belmont? Something that it makes me think of is I know Tennessee has seen a lot of population growth in the state. So particularly from people who are wanting to live in, a more conservative place, moving from like California, let's say. And so maybe if you have a bunch of, it's hard. I mean, it really, I don't know the actual number, how much of an effect that might have. But it might suggest that maybe there's specific interest in that school for that market of Tennessee, population growth. I think it's a Christian school. Who knows? That could be. There's probably multiple factors at play, I would say,
Yeah.
but I suspect it is probably indicative of increased application numbers. Um, you also, I'm curious to see too, because we've talked about how last cycle was really competitive, and so I'm sure there's, I'm curious how many people who maybe didn't have the outcomes they wanted last cycle and decided to reapply for this cycle, I'm curious how much carryover is going to be reflected in the numbers for this year too. I don't know. That
Yeah.
was a lot of different thoughts at once, but
You would
um,
you would expect those carryover people to apply earlier in the cycle. No, that's good. That was the reaction I was hoping you were having. I kind of had an implicit conclusion. I didn't say it when I said that applications are up 50% year over year, but
mhm,
the implicit conclusion there is therefore it's 50% harder to apply to law school this year, which is false because, like you addressed, there's all these reasons that Belmont, which is a sample of one, could be anomalous.
mhm.
Well, it could be Tennessee. It could also just be that their marketing is more aggressive. Some schools constantly email fee waivers, they're nonstop.
True.
Others, like I can't ever remember hearing from like Idaho School of Law when I mean, I applied or didn't apply, but I was in their system a long time ago for CRS, which is LSAC's software or I guess database that they distribute of candidates. And I'm sure
Yeah.
there are schools that like I was in emails for probably 3 to 4 years from certain schools. Regent, I remember, I don't even know where that is, but I just kept hearing from them. Liberty would
Oh
not.
yeah.
Stetson, oh my God, Stetson, just like nonstop. So it's possible that Belmont decided this was the year of our email spam, and that could
Yeah.
easily up. So, anyways, I do think you're right in that I'd say this application looks harder. Not largely based on the Belmont data, but there is other data. The one that I wanted to hit on was the test registration. And for video people, I actually just share this so that you can see it and also so that Madeline can see it. But last year was the biggest cycle in living memory. I don't know that it was the biggest cycle ever because I honestly don't know what was happening in 2002. But from what I know about law school admissions with kind of the backwards looking frame of, say, the past 20 years, or at least the past 15 years, this is unprecedented. And there was an increase of, I
Mhm.
want to say, 18% of applications year over year. And LSAT scores are not perfectly equivalent to applications, but yeah, I guess just kind of thinking out loud, what do you see, Madeline, upon looking at this? Are you still trying to figure out how to read LSAC's
No,
city?
no, I mean, I see the comparison. We have the comparison for August and September, right? So I mean, August, this is, well, I guess it's registered. So, oh, but it does say test takers as well for August because we have the data. Okay. That essentially, what is it, like 4,000 more people took it in this August compared to last August?
It went from
Um,
2 to 27-ish or 26-ish. The reportable scores aren't as substantial an increase. That went from 18.6 to
oh yeah, there,
21.4.
yeah. Oh, because right, I was looking at test takers. These are like the actual like okay ones that are
A lot of
reportable.
people are canceling that.
But that's still like what, like almost 3,000. And then just we only have the data for registered for September, but it's like nearly 6,000. Which that's, what is that, 33% for
Yeah,
September, right? Yeah, or like a third or whatever percentage. Here we are. It came for the LSAT, staying for the percentage and math lesson. Um, but again, statistically noteworthy increases, I would say, is the takeaway there.
yeah, I'd say it's not as substantial as like because you can cherry pick data. For those of you looking, you might see the October numbers, which is 35 this year versus 22 last year. And I will note this is a misleading number because a lot of people register and then decide they're not taking the test. So this 35
Yeah,
number will only go down. In fact, the August number, because I posted about this, so I remember it was at 34,000 after the deadline had closed. And as you can see, it got down to 26,000 registered. So there's a lot of melting of people that had decided they're going to take it and then change their mind. So I would be careful to extrapolate from the incomplete data. But August is complete. The August test is done. It happened. And we can clearly see
yeah,
there's a market increase. Maybe not as big as you might draw from the October or September numbers, but still like 10 to 15% more applicants, which is an increase over, remember, the hardest cycle ever, which would, I mean, not to connect the dots too much here, and this could be wrong for other reasons, but I would expect this cycle to be substantially more difficult given that there's just, from all the available data, an increase in the number of applicants. So that was fun. I guess kind of with this just brings us back to application timing. We won't spend too much time on application timing, but if you had someone coming to you, they're just starting the LSAT, and this is the cycle they're looking at, what advice do you have for the, I'd say, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I'm graduating in the fall, I want to go to law school, Madeline, what do I do?
the thing I'll always say, like, yeah, I'll say technically you can apply this cycle and start next fall, but you shouldn't do that. If you want to do everything in your interest to set yourself up for long-term success, in terms of where you go to law school and therefore what are your outcomes after law school, the how much you pay for law school, all that stuff, you are just not giving yourself enough time if you're completely starting the process um right now. Like haven't even taken that, like literally nothing. You're way better off. And I'll always be blunt about that and say, this is what I would do. I would wait a whole nother cycle so that you can do all of this stuff, get it done, and apply early. Can you apply, like, rush through it, apply February, January, February, whatever? Yes, but you shouldn't if you are strongly invested in your future and what that looks like. And again, I know we've talked about this before, how it's it can be a tough pill to swallow, especially when you're 22 and maybe you're about to graduate and all your friends are graduating or whatever. And the life seems so much more narrow in terms of how things have to happen and timelines and things like that. But I don't know anyone, I've never met anyone who has taken that time to get it right and has regretted it. So,
Yeah, and can you versus should you are two separate things because if you're viewing this through the framing of just getting into law school, like sure, you can apply with really late LSATs with pretty mediocre scores, and there will be schools that are happy to take your federal loan money, which is admittedly capped, which might make it harder for you this cycle because the amount of people that can get ripped off has really been cut down, or at least the scale to which you can be ripped off has been substantially cut down. So it's one of those things where if you're coming at this from the framing of I just need to get into law school, the advice technically is true, but I would consider that lying by omission for the people telling you that. Because, like, yes, you can get into law school, but these are going to be schools that do not produce highly paid attorneys or even moderately well paid ones. Because if you're going $225,000 in debt for school, you should be hoping that you're going to make six figures upon graduation. And the reality is, the
mhm.
schools where you can adequately pull it off this cycle are not those schools. It is incredibly
Yeah.
unlikely. And that's the context that I fear people are missing when they say, oh, it's fine to apply with February. It's like, yeah, there's plenty of people that get in, but that's only if getting in's the goal. My goal, at least for the people I talk to, is I want you guys to like have, I don't know. I think being better off for having gone to law school is the minimum viable like acceptance. And
Yeah.
that's not true of a lot of law students. I mean, I don't know, I don't have percentages, so I'd be spitballing, but it's not an insignificant percentage. I'd wager probably half, if not more, of law students are worse off for having decided to attend law school than had they not. And I mean, this is shown out just by the amount that the attrition rate in terms of the legal field, people quit this profession. And I think that's largely because it's not what they expected it to be. They went in with one idea of what
Mhm.
it was, it turned out not to be that. And they then make the mature decision, which is I'm not going to throw a good time after bad. I'm not going to continue down this bad road. But if they had just educated, which is why hopefully you guys are listening now, they could have avoided that in the first place. Because as always, like the legal field is not necessarily bad. If you're a smart kid who's willing to do what needs to be done to make seven figures one day, there are not many better paths than just like going and becoming a big law legal monster. However, those people don't apply in February. And you want to
Mhm.
just be realistic about what you're going into. Because if you are like, oh, I just want to go to law school, it's a ticket to the upper class. I'm not here to confirm those delusions. You can find people that will tell you that. They're not looking out for you. So, like, I get irritated because I'll get called names for this quite commonly, but I would argue largely stupid people. But that's a little bit of a jab, but also true in my opinion. But it's irritating because like this is not a good marketing point, folks. Like this does not sell our LSAT class better when I tell people, hey, don't apply this cycle. It is a net drain on us. It definitely holds me back. If I was looking to make money, the easiest thing to do would be talking about how applying late doesn't matter. We'll get you in, sign up for a package. We're going to aim for February. But I just can't do that ethically and sleep at night. So I'll take the
Well,
hit.
because if anything, I feel like sometimes when I have this conversation, sometimes
Yeah,
what it
go ahead.
prompts these people to think critically, and then they're like, "Wait a minute, I actually don't want to do this after all. Like I was just trying
Yeah.
to apply because that's what I thought I wanted to do, or my family wanted me to do, etc." So, I've had people say that to me, and I'm like, that's a great decision. Like if you know that this, like you've kind of taken all that information and you're able to make that informed choice. That's what it's really all about. Is just making the most informed
Yeah.
choice.
Well, yeah, because we're not, Madeline and I and other people, we are not here to make decisions for you. Often I
Yeah.
think we say that you shouldn't do something just because I think the argument for it makes absolutely no sense. Like the idea of applying to a really bottom tier law school with a April LSAT score. I guess theoretically, if your end goal for life is I want to have a law degree and be in poverty, then sure, that's a great way to get there. I just always presume that's not people's end goals. And so, anyways, I just try to describe that as the end goal of going to Cal Western, applying late in the cycle, is you in poverty for goodsies. And if that's what you want, then sure, apply in late. cycle with a mid LSAT score and let Cal Western rip you off for as much as they are now legally allowed to according to the federal government, which admittedly is a lot less. However, that's just not the plan. So be careful about like think about what the outcomes are. A lot of folks don't. It's just law school's the end all be all, and that puts folks in real pickles. So man, I had something I want to transition into off of that, but now I'm blanking. Oh yeah, the idea of the talking someone out or getting them to critically think it. I got in real hot water over this one in the past. I don't know that you saw this Instagram post, but I told people that if one gap year derails your whole legal plan, you probably weren't meant to go to law school in the first place. And I just want to reiterate that that is true. If taking a gap year is going to prevent you from going down this path, guys, this is not a small decision. This is not a vacation where like you don't get to do it. This is your whole career. And if you were serious about your whole career, a 1 year delay does not change that. So if it does, what that indicates is that you weren't that serious about being a lawyer in the first place. And if you're not that serious, you shouldn't do this because this is a huge life decision that will impact everything in your future, assuming you stick with it in terms of like your work-life balance, your family life. I mean, you can always quit, but in that sense, I don't know why you go to law school unless you're like Madeline and you are looking just for academic challenges because she's a sicko. But anyway, so with that, I have a few emails from LSAT kiddos just asking for my advice, which is good because they have
Yeah.
known themselves in the lion's den. So the first one is a resume question, and
Mm,
they say, "Hey Ben, I've got a quick law school resume question. I took a semester off during undergrad due to family reasons. My grandfather was dying and needed around the clock care, and I no longer wanted to pursue my former major and had no idea what to major in. I also had to unfortunately take a medical leave myself, which lasted about 1.5 years. Basically, I have no idea how to include all this and whether or not I should even add me taking a semester off in my resume. I understand I'm not the most competitive applicant, but I'm also not aiming for a T14 either. Any help would be appreciated. Thanks." And they do say they're not the most competitive. I have no idea what their stats are. That was not included in this email.
okay. So I want to make sure I'm understanding this right. Did they take a year and a half off or a semester off?
Yeah, it wasn't
Or
the most clear. And
okay.
I guess what they did is I'll be honest, I worry when there's more than one excuse. You have both your grandfather dying, which I'm sorry to hear, that's awful. And then you also had a medical leave yourself, which you don't have to go into more detail than that. 1.5 years. So I think they switched majors and took a break from school. I don't know.
Okay.
My immediate response is it kind of doesn't matter. Taking a break is actually the mature decision. It seems like a dumb
Yeah.
decision to push through and get bad grades. But if you just said, like, hey, I had life stuff come up, I actually took a break from school and I returned when I was ready, I don't even think you really need to address that. I think the schools are like, I mean, maybe a quick addendum just if they look at the gap.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I would just like have just like don't necessarily do anything in the resume, just have the dates, have the times, and then you could do a brief addendum that just contextualizes that and that's it. Because when they're reading these applications, they take everything all together, right? So like it's not like they'll only have one piece of information and not the other, etc. So I would say again, just kind of give the context. And other than that, though, I feel like we don't have to, draw aggressive attention to it.
Yeah. And what I will say, one of the reasons I want to talk about this one is because I think it's telling what is omitted here. This is not your problem. Like you say, you're not competitive. I imagine that's in reference to this person's LSAT and GPA. Like any work you're doing on this addendum, which I would say maybe 3 to 4 sentences, just very contextual. Hey, I had a medical condition this year. I took a break. When things resolved, I returned to school. Like it does not need to be longer than that. Just tell them what's up. And as long as your transcript and resume aligns with that, they'll get it because they get that medical conditions happen and they're not going to hold that against you. I do worry that mentioning two reasons, like anything over one, makes me concerned. You do only have two, which is your grandfather dying and the medical leave. I would personally keep it to the medical leave. Unfortunately, grandparents dying is fairly typical, to put it lightly. Not to say like I don't know how close you were, I don't know how much you actually helped them, but this is not exactly groundbreaking. Oh my God, your grandparents died. It's like that's pretty normal for.
And, I will be callous for a second, going back to your anecdote of your wife's friend at the movie. They could have been at the movies, they could have been at grandpa's deathbed, and they would have wanted her to do that assignment, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And further, like I mean, the medical leave is fine because it's private and it kind of is a conversation stopper where it's just like, I had a medical issue, which is, I would say it's since resolved. You don't want it lingering in their mind that this could come back. But
Yeah.
as long as you're textual, I do also want to note, I mean, you can't see the email, but I read it to you. Some of these sentences, I think one of them had four ands in it. Like my grandfather was dying and needed round the clock care. And I no longer want to pursue my former major. and had no idea what to major in. I guess is that three or is that four? It's either three or four. The point is that it's weak writing, and I find that like I'm more worried about how you write than what you write. And I guess that this is an email you're blasting off to an LSAT person, but I would really caution that your writing, if it looks like that, is going to hold you back. That's too many words in one sentence. You need to break that up and just make it clearer, which I don't know that that's how you wrote in your essays, but if it is, that's going to be a problem because it makes it to the point where even Madeline had to, I'd say, kind of catch up and like what just happened. There was on there, and I'm not totally sure of what happened. But anyways,
Well, to something I want to mention with that, this is slightly, it's something I see a lot. I'm sure you see it too, and I'm curious what you think about it when you get those emails probably from people where it's like, what advice do you have about like, like my, or it's like my LSAT's like not that great, but I have really great work experience, or really, I'm like, cool, but like that's really not as impactful as you think it is. Or like all these kind of side issues, or whether work experience, et cetera. Not to say it's irrelevant or it doesn't matter at all, but it's like it's most likely not what's going to make or break your application.
and further, you guys are too close to yourselves to have an objective perspective. Everyone, and I mean everyone I talk to, thinks they have a kick-ass personal statement, and maybe 10% of them have a good one, let alone
Mm-hmm.
kick-ass. It's just people will be like, I have the best personal statement ever. They'll send it in. I'm like, they're not even making it to sentence two. This is dog shit. And yet that person will think that they have the best one ever. So I'll also note this is not meant to be a job, but I've noticed that LSAT scores correlate very well with who writes well and who doesn't. It's one of those things where I feel like I can almost guess someone's LSAT score based on how they communicate, which it's bad, but I've just had such a sample over the past 5 years of people I've talked to. I know their LSAT scores and I see how they email me. And I mean, I've just become the biggest defender of the LSAT year over year. Like every year I get worse. So I'm like, this is such a good test. Or not good, but what it tells me is very reliable info. And I have to imagine that law schools know that too. So anyways, I have
Mm-hmm.
another email question, which is someone who wrote in about score preview, which is always a fun one. And
Ooh.
said, hey Ben, do you think score preview is worth it for the September test? For reference, they hadn't taken it yet. This is the day before. I scored a 170 in August. Also, what are your thoughts on well, here's a second. I guess we'll take the one question at a time. So score preview. What's your general take when someone asks you?
So I generally, with exceptions, but for me, pretty rare exceptions, I'm like score preview's biggest hater. Just because for what it stands for, like on principle. You know what I mean? Like the fact that it really is designed like as a moneymaker for LSAC, and that it just I don't like that it preys upon kind of the emotions or like vulnerable state of a test taker. It's like this weird mind game that they're playing where like, oh, you want to see how you did before you decide to cancel? You can for this price of, however much it costs. And
Yeah, and then
and
it
I
goes
just
up after the test.
yeah,
It's
and it's just
5.85.
so I just don't like the way it's implemented in this way that's like intentionally manipulative. And so based off that principle, I strongly, strongly, strongly dislike it. I just don't respect like the ethics underlying it or the lack of ethics, I would say, that underlie it. It's just like a money grab, I think. So that's honestly my biggest reason. In terms of the actual concept of being able to see your score, etc., I have less of an issue with that. And that's why, if you have the money and it's not if you don't really care that much about the money, might as well. But then what again frustrates me is that doesn't provide the same luxury to people who that money might actually be better used or more importantly used for something else and feel like they have to part with that money so they can see their score. I typically think though, even for people who do buy it, it doesn't really matter because most likely you're not going to cancel the score. For me, there's really very, very few instances in which it's pragmatic to cancel the score. So,
Yeah,
um,
from a
if you
practical
suspect you might be in one of those instances, then buy it. But if you know that I'm not going to cancel my score regardless of what it is, which you probably shouldn't cancel regardless of what it is, then don't buy it.
Yeah, I tell people basically never to get it unless it will help their mental state in terms of anxiety. Because from a practical perspective, it's basically useless. Law schools,
Mm-hmm.
due to the fact that they operate off the ABA rankings and only report their highest scores to the ABA, which then goes into the US News rankings. I should clarify, the rankings are not ABA, but they are based off ABA data, which is only counts people's highest scores. They are incentivized to only count your highest score, and they actually get punished by the rankings if they consider multiple scores, because the schools that choose not to consider them will get these diamonds in the rough, whereas schools that choose to be holistic will get duds, for lack of a better term. So it's not useful because even if you go, like let's say this 170 scores a 165, that shouldn't change his marketplace value if the actors are rational. They should not care that he scored a 165. To me, a
Mhm.
C where you cancel it is almost worse, which is often what happens when someone has score preview, and that's
Yeah.
because now you invite all sorts of speculation, which is how bad did you do? It's now ambiguous. So the utility of it is, I would argue, close to zero. I guess if you scored like a 132, you would do something, but that would warrant an agreement anyways. And anyways, usually people are canceling scores that are very within the randomness of like, oh, you're a 170. That means you can probably score as low as like a 165, maybe as high as a 175. Um, and
Yeah, what I tell people is, yeah, if they see, because a lot of people, and this is something I noticed too, a lot of people don't understand that when you cancel your score, the fact that you took the exam is not redacted. I often have to correct that misinformation that people think if you choose to cancel, the fact that you ever took the exam is just wiped from existence. That's not how it works. They can see that you took it, and again, the number is just hidden. So why would you leave the door open for the adcoms to make an assumption there? They're just going to fill that in with a 120, you know?
yeah, and I do also want to hit on, you mentioned how this is somewhat predatory in terms of LSAC kind of generating revenue off their test takers. Like we talked about earlier, there's about 30,000-ish people that take the LSAT any given administration. I mean, that's a little hyperbolic. It's like 25,000. But the point is, if they sell some fraction of these people $45 score preview, it's a ton of money. And that's what I think it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
They just realize we can make like 100K if we just put this button on, or not even 100K. What would that be? 10 million if everyone buys it? And no, obviously, well, no, hold on. Now my math is off. So it's 25K times $50, which is that 10 million? It's either 1 million or 10 million. I'm just not sure if I have the factors off. The point is, it's a lot of money, and they just know we offer this, some percent of people take it. I actually took the first ever LSAT with score preview, which was the October 2020 LSAT, and I bought it because I didn't really understand better. It seemed like a good feature. And even someone who I would consider myself like a very informed LSAT taker, scoring in the 90th percentile, they got my money, and I was like, I'll pay for it. Like, why not? It was funny back then. You can only pay for it for your first LSAT. You couldn't do it for multiple ones. So I
Oh
took
yeah,
the
I remember that.
it was not an option. But at some point, LSAC decided to change it, and now you can get it either way.
Well, because probably a lot of people bought it and they saw, they saw some dollar signs there.
Yeah, and then further, now they have this anxiety thing where it's now instead of $45, it's $85 if you buy it after the
Yeah.
task. And I'm trying to like steel man their position here, which is like, what could the reason for that be? But I don't even think you can come up with a rational reason. It's just it's clearly a money grab. Because I always try to give LSSC the benefit of the doubt. I don't think they're the bad institution that they're made out to be. I don't think they're perfect as institutions don't tend to be, but this one it's hard to defend them
This
on.
what yeah, that's how I feel too. It's like, people always like bitch and moan about like the cast fee, the score report fee. I'm like, you got to pay it. Like, it's just they are the ones in charge of this. They do all of this, so we paid the fee. Fine. At least there's kind of something in return for it. Like, we can apply to law school, even
Yeah.
though whatever the kind of like the gatekeeping fees that you have to pay, which are probably higher than they should be. But like, again, I can kind of like, okay, fine, right? But yeah, this one I just think crosses more of a line, I would say.
Yeah, it's like I'm like we're LSAT people. Part of the LSAT logical reasoning is you try to be the attorney almost for the argument if you're told to strengthen it. You're always the attorney for the opposition when you're weakening it, pointing out assumptions, etc. And so I'm really trying to see how like I could strengthen LSAT's conclusion given their premises in terms of like the LSAT therefore score preview. And
Mhm.
I don't understand the argument that they could make. It's to me because they could. There's nothing stopping them from adding this as a free feature that everyone gets.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if they really were so concerned about giving this service, then just make it available. Or maybe because they always like to charge a fee, maybe just make it like I don't know, like $20, $30. Or maybe you pay a one-time flat fee and you can do this for every time you take the exam. Or I don't know. There's just like if you are gonna make it a paid thing, I feel like there's just so many other ways to go about it that aren't just so blatantly money grab.
Yeah,
They could have been a lot more subtly money grab if they wanted to.
I wouldn't even mind it if there was utility to it and it was like useful. Because if it's an actual product,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
the issue is it's not even useful. It's just it
Yeah,
completely preys on anxiety.
it's
There's
just a scam. Yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
and that being said, I think most people I work with end up getting score preview because even though from a rational perspective, talking through it, it doesn't make sense. there's still that lizard like monkey part of your brain, which is like, what if I melt down? Wouldn't it be nice to have that in my back pocket? And so
Yeah.
they get a lot of people, and they got me. I mean, to be fair, I hadn't really critically thought through it when I bought it. And it was also the first time they ever offered it. And it seemed like it was my first time taking the LSAT. So I'm like, I'll just take
Yeah.
it.
I mean, you were new to the exam as a concept as a whole, you
Yeah, I
know.
did so much stupid shit when I studied for the LSAT. Like I was like, if I had people study the way I studied, it would be suboptimal, and that's because you just learn a lot more about the test through the exposure than you do. Which to be fair, I studied better than like 99% of you. So like for all my like making fun of myself, it's compared to perfect. I studied way harder than most of you do, but compared to like what I could have done, it was pretty weak. So yeah, that's that. I do want to actually throw LSAC a bone real quick because, as I'm sure you know, LSAC does this very naughty thing where they make it so that score release is after the deadline for the next test. And it
Mhm.
actually looks like they've amended this going forwards. It looks like the tests are fixed. So the September score comes out. Oh, wait, no, I was looking at the wrong dates. I was looking at the argumentative writing. Hold on. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the bone I'm about to
No,
throw.
but okay, it's not maybe for the ones that are back to back, but I swear the ones that were like 2 months apart or something. I know what you mean. There was like a 1 day overlap, or they've been there. There have
It's a
been
little
recently
bit.
like 48 hour over like or not overlaps, gaps.
Yeah,
But
so you get 1 day from the September score coming out to make a decision for November. Um,
yeah, okay, so it's not for the next one. It's for like the two from.
so it jumps October, but then you get your November score back before the January registration deadline. You get 3 days, which are Thanksgiving. So if you bomb November, you get to have that fun conversation with a grandma about how law school is going. Um, although to be fair, they are not doing as well as I thought. I think I was looking at this in class and I was looking at the argumentative writing and I thought they fixed it, but they didn't. I was just looking at the wrong dates. So man, I'm trying to compliment you guys. You guys make it hard to compliment you if
No,
you're
it's kind of like a here damn window. It's like a 24 hour like window.
oh, it's
But before it used to be like nothing.
yeah. Well, they used to have the overlaps where you couldn't even do this. So
Yeah.
from January to February, you cannot take. I mean, you have to literally take. You won't even have taken January before the February deadline because the January dates are the 7th through 10th of January. You have to
Mhm.
decide before Christmas whether or not you're taking the February exam. Which, when I'm advising people, I just tell them if you're ready for January, you're also ready for February, register for both of them. People don't do this because they're
Mhm.
goofballs, but they should. And then,
Yeah.
fortunately, you do actually get your February score back before April, and you get your April score back before June. So it's really just the January, February, and September, October that are, and I guess October, November as well. But I mean, if you guys are applying this cycle and you're not registered for November, you're a crazy person. Like, I'm not saying it's a good plan, but it's kind of the only plan you have left at this point. So anyway, I just thought it was,
Um, I I find though it's help like a lot of things too when you say like okay if you're ready for January, you're ready for February. I find a lot of times when people do register for both, it does help a lot mentally too to just not obviously the plan has not changed. Like you go in and you try your best, and you put in your best effort for January and then February. But I find that when people just real like know that they have that February like there in their back pocket if they need it, it helps take a little bit of that pressure off of January. Not meaning like you can go in and just intentionally bomb it. We don't want to obviously, swing too far the other way there, but things get really stressful when the stakes are really high. And I feel like it's a way to kind of artificially kind of construct like lower stakes in a way that can sometimes mentally help.
yeah. Well, and here's where I can say do as I did, not as I said. Or I guess both here because they align. But I actually did register for two tests when I was taking it because I studied until I liked my scores. Once I was scoring consistently in the 99th percentile, I registered for both the October and November LSAT in 2020. I took them both. I mean, I liked my October score, but I was just like, I'm registered, so I may as well take it. And yeah, basically, like it wasn't that hard. And to be fair, it was cheaper back then. It was 180. Although inflation adjusted, I think that might. I mean, I don't even know that they've
No,
increased.
I think when I took it, it was 200.
Was it really? Am I just
Yeah, it
misremembering?
was 200. It's 200. It was 200. But still, either way, it's substantially cheaper than 248. But no, it was $200.
Yeah. Okay. So either way, though, but either way, to me, it was pretty clear that the marginal cost of not having November, which to be fair, I guess it didn't even make sense because I took it when I was 20 years old. I was a junior in undergrad in the fall semester, so I didn't even have the pressure. Maybe I should have just taken October, and then if not November, I should have taken January. Maybe that would have been optimal. So maybe I did do it wrong because there's no reason that I had to like rush to take November. But I just
Well, I
felt
think it
ready.
depends. Like, for example, I only registered for one pass, but I was like fully aware going into it that I was on like zero timeline, and I could just like regroup and reassess to retake it if I needed to or if I didn't. But I think obviously if you're on any sort of, at least, you're aiming for any sort of schedule or timeline, then it's probably in your best interest to have them ready or do
Well,
both.
and my thought was pretty simple, which is I prepped until I was ready. Once I liked my scores, I just emptied the clip and I was like, I'm gonna take this test. Which, to be fair, you only had 3 shots back then because
Hmm.
I mean the amount of times you're allowed to take the LSAT has changed a lot, even over the time I've been around the LSAT world. And it used to be unlimited. It used to be 3 times lifetime. For those of you wondering currently, which if you're listening to this well in the future, look up current date because this is September of 2025. You can take it 5 times in 5 years or 7 times lifetime, which to me is an
Hmm.
odd limitation given that how many people do LSAT over a 6 year window. But even now, I haven't expired my 5 year window. And I have been LSAT pro for the past 5 years because I started pretty quickly right after I finished the test, which is, I mean, it's funny, such an art. Like, I still can't use my, well, I didn't take it 5 times, but had I, it still would not, the first one would not have fallen off. In fact, it's just about to fall off next month if I wanted to apply to law school, which I don't. But if I did, I would have to take the test again, which is a bummer. So, anyways, I thought that was worthwhile because people really bungled that one up, which is always amusing to me. But it is. Oh, sorry. This person had 2 questions. We really went off the road on score preview and then registrations and all that good stuff. So
I
they,
feel really strongly though about score preview, so I'm glad we got to talk about it.
yeah, and the good news is we get talked about it like every 3 months because people forget, and you guys don't listen to all the episodes, so we just have to hit the same topic over and over and over again. But that's also what you signed up for when you teach a standardized test. So I can blame myself for that one. Okay, but this person had another question. So as we recall, they scored a 170, and they asked, "What are your thoughts on applying to schools with a 170 median before getting another score? I'm registered for October and November too, but I worry that November may be too late. I know I probably need a few more points for Cornell. The 170 matches Berkeley's median, and my 4.0 GPA is above every school's median."
Ooh, that's a good question. This is the same person. I totally forgot they have more questions.
Yeah.
Oof, I mean, this is where we have to weigh the balance of the stronger app versus the earlier timeline. When are they taking it again? When did you say? I know you just said it.
Well, they took
October?
September, then they're
Oh,
taking
they're
October.
waiting for September.
They really emptied the clip. They took August, September, October, November. So like which is honestly, it's annoying how few people do this because this is the optimal way to take the LSAT once you're prepped. Which this kid,
Yeah.
like he studied and he still studied. Like I see him in class. He works hard. So
So they have the one on file, the 170 flat, right, is August. Is that right? And they haven't gotten September back yet.
yeah, we'll know shortly.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I would say I would wait if the September score is higher, which hopefully it is, but it could go, who knows? If it's higher, let's say if it's 172, 173, I'd probably go ahead and apply if the median, what is it for Berkeley is 170. Because then you could still be applying pretty early.
Yeah, the one
In
thing,
October, they'll get back by I would try to have the apps in like latest Halloween, if not sooner. But
yeah, he needs to be ready to go when when
yeah,
it's flying. The other thing I want to hit on is that medians are backwards looking. You don't know what they're targeting this year. So even if you have
yeah.
further, the medians from the 2024 cycle, the 2025 class just started, and you will be part of the 2026 class. So operating off
Hmm.
of what is the case of the current posted medians is a dangerous game because you might be at median or even 1 point above, but that might be just below their current target because the number of high LSAT scores is way up, the number of applicants is way up. And as such, maybe Berkeley decides this is the year we go for a 172, and now you thought you were above median, but now you're below median, even though technically you are at where they were 2 years ago. I mean, your GPA obviously helps a lot given that you have a 4.0, but
Yeah.
I do see this from folks where they look backwards a little bit too much. And yes, like historical data is better than no data, but it is not the present data. And you don't know what the schools are aiming for. And like if I were a school,
Hmm.
I would be getting greedy this year because I know the other schools are going to. So if I don't get greedy, my ranking will fall relative to the other schools. So they're all going to be pushing. Like, guys, being at median is probably not good enough this cycle. Not because you won't be at
Yeah.
median, because the medians are all going to be shifting upwards.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
guess
Schools are in a big position of agency right now.
yeah.
Um,
And so my short advice is, hey, like well, what did I say? I just said like, oh, man, I didn't really answer this question very well. My response was one sentence. You'll likely get in at many T14s. Money will just be sparse. Um, I mean, I did say a 4.0 17X will still be attractive. applying late is much more of an issue for weak applicants, which you will not be, which is true. I mean, I guess
Hmm.
I'd say clear that it is still a problem to apply late, even if you're strong. But
Hmm.
if this person has a 172 in September, it for sure beats a 170 in August. That just it clears a decent amount of the bell curve.
Yeah.
I think people underestimate how many more 170s there are relative to 172s. The numbers sounds very close, but on the bell curve, you're passing a lot of people as you go up those.
Hmm.
Every notch you go up in the 170s, which is so silly because I, as an LSAT professional, I see no difference between someone with a 170 and a 173 and a 175, even,
Yeah.
or at least it's within. There's a lot of like margin of error in those windows. Yet the schools, because of the rankings, they care a shit ton about. In fact, it's so funny. Like our best LSAT teacher right now has the lowest score of the LSAT teachers on record, and our worst teacher had the highest score, which is, I mean, it's from an LSAT teacher perspective, but just evaluating them, it's not correlated or not correlated, but it's not causal. Which, if you're good at the LSAT, you'll get that one. But anyway, oh, and this is we have a little bit more time. This is a fun email I got because I think this one's so indicative of someone who is way too on Reddit. I'm gonna copy paste this in the Zoom chat for you so that you can read it, but I will also read it out loud for the listeners. So they said, "Hey man, I love all of your content. To preface, I'm afraid that my GPA doesn't support my LSAT enough for good offers at T14s. I'm below the median at most of these at a 3.81, yet above all 75th percentile LSAT at 177. I also finished out on undergrad with 3 years of 3.95 plus. My freshman year involved COVID football, not great for mental. I'm fresh out of college with a paralegal job in New York City. I know these are, quote, champagne problems, but I want to hear your thoughts. If instead I should be shooting for lower ranked schools where I'm above both. Thanks so much." So do you think our 3.81, 177 is going to have a hard time getting the T14s?
No, at least they're self-aware. I appreciate the somewhat, self-awareness here that they seem to be aware that they're fine. It's one of those things, again, the T14 is always competitive, but you can have great numbers and sometimes, you can get rejected. Like it happens. But I would be like for this person to not get into a single T14, they would have to like actively do something problematic in their application. Like they're either their essays or something in there is like actively bad. And if it's not, then they'll get into a T14.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'll note, like law school admissions is holistic. You do need to have good essays and whatnot, but your
mhm.
3.81 median is not the weight this person seems to attribute it to. I guess if you're looking for a full ride, yeah, it can really hold you back. Like, are you going to get full rides from Chicago with a 3.81? No. And had you had a 4.0, you probably are looking at really insane scholarships because, like, you are the optimal candidate. You have kick-ass numbers. You are a paralegal, so you actually know what you're getting into, as opposed to like random poli sci goofball. Which, no offense to our random poli sci goofballs, but work experience in the field does demonstrate that you know what you're getting yourself into more than a thesis on like Uzbekistan does. So it's different. And what I did want to say, oh, I had a thought. Oh, is that there are schools that approach this differently. Like last cycle, for example, Cornell sucked up all the weirdos. They are the like law school of misfit toys. Because I had all these kids that I did consulting with, and some of them I knew their essays were good, and other kids, despite their better judgment, rejected my suggestions and decided to write their own essays. And I told them, hey, this is probably not what to write about, but you do you. And I will tell you, at the 11th hour, Cornell came in and swooped up all the high LSAT weirdos. Every single one of them, stuck out of all the other T14s. Cornell called them up and said, hey, your essays might, well, I mean, they didn't tell them your essays might suck, but they well, and these are people that like underperform their numbers aggressively. And yet Cornell came in with scholarship for all these kids and said, don't go to the school you're going to, we'll let you come. And I will note all these kids were getting into like the Vanderbilts. They were still getting into like the Floridas of the world. Like it was not like they were striking out.
Mhm.
It's just they were
Yeah.
striking out schools where they should have been competitive. Like they were going
Yeah. Yeah.
to screw off at Northwestern and Penn. And then Cornell decided, we are. And to be fair, I wonder how much of this came out after their ranking drops. I wonder if they decided we got to beef up our LSAT median. And they looked at their wait list, pulled up all the LSATs above median, and said, we're going to bump our LSAT by 1 point. Because they could have done that by bringing in a bunch of people above median. So anyway, the takeaway I wanted for this person is I fear they may be too online if they're worried they're not going to get
Yeah.
acceptable with a 381, 177. And I just wanted to kind of bust that myth that like admissions is not as hard as Reddit will have you guys think. You guys need to get off Reddit if you're getting your advice from there.
Yeah.
It's people. I will also note that the Reddit people are the most awkward weirdos. Like if you look on there, you'll see people with 178, 4.0s that strike out at the T14. But that is because they're psychos and they write stupid stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not because it's that hard to get into law school. It's not that hard. I had someone with a 173, like 3.9, who got into like all the T14s, non-URM, by the way, for those of you that are curious. And don't get me wrong, those are really good numbers, but that's not like people on Reddit would tell you to like not even bother applying to Harvard with those numbers. And it's not true. It's not as hard as people think. So,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, I mean,
obviously,
I had a way worse GPA. I had worse LSAT, and I was able to get into a couple 214. So, again, it was a bit of a reach, but it happened,
yeah,
and
but
so this
normally
person
you have,
definitely.
I was gonna say you forget you have the most elite work experience at the T14 all clamoring for. Uh,
No, that and yeah, for those who might be listening, it's because I literally have no work experience. So, and it was fine. So I think this person should really think of it as a both and, like, craft strong applications for the top 14 schools that you're interested in. If people who want to blanket, they can blanket, but if there's certain schools, like you just really, I don't know, like don't want to go to. I get, for like money purposes, having options that can make sense, but apply to schools you want to in the T14. And I would also, apply to some lower rank schools too and give yourself some fat scholarship options as well. And, just open up all those doors and then walk through the one you want to.
yeah, because I mean, what it comes down to is if you have the numbers, you just have to execute. Like as long as you're not a psycho,
Hmm.
it does work out. Like law schools do reject people based on their essays, but it's a lot more you're failing the test as opposed to like you have to clear the hurdle. You guys,
Hmm.
just put this lightly, a lot of you are weirdos and you're not good at self-containing. And I say this as someone who does not have the best filter, but you guys have to know your audience. I am unfireable. I am uncancelable because I can just keep going and it just keeps moving along. This is not that way. Like these people can just determine to throw you in the pile of trash. And as such, you have to cater to them. So if you're not going to cater to them, that's going to be an issue. So make sure that you're actually writing to your audience, which are these admissions officers that care. I mean, you can find out what they care about. There's lots of good resources out there. Um, so anyway, there's also a lot of bad resources. I don't know. I've run into this phenomenon on TikTok because I don't use TikTok a lot, but when I do, I am because my fiance will send me like animal videos, so I have it to like not fiance. She gets mad whenever I say that, my wife, but we've only been married for like 2 months, so I get a pass on that. Um, and my algorithm's now skewed towards law school admission stuff because that's what I tend to watch because it's interesting to me. And I keep seeing people post their dog shit personal statements, and they're like, "This is the personal statement that got me into T14." And I'll start reading them like, "This is bad. Like, this did not get you. You got in despite of this essay, not because of it." So, and it'll have like 1,000 likes and like 700 saves. I'm like, "Oh God!" Like, oh no, the admission, like the clones of this one. So I would just say, folks, like be very careful about the essays you're using. I will plug the Yale essays are good. They have a packet of essays they distributed last year. It's like 60 pages. Those are all good. If you really want it and you can't find it, shoot me an email. I'll just send it to you. But some random kid that got into a T14, they very well could have gotten in despite their essay. In fact, this is so funny. One of those Cornell weirdos that got sucked up. She's pretty big on TikTok. You probably know who I'm talking about. She's now doing admissions essay stuff. She stopped doing LSAT advice and is now doing admission stuff. And I'm like, I don't know that her essays were weak, but I do know she underperformed her numbers at other schools. And then I saw the Cornell weirdo, like misfit toys stuck up. I'm like, I wonder if you were one of the misfit toys. I don't know for sure, but I saw other misfit toys get sucked up late in the cycle. And anyway, and now that person's charging for admissions consulting at a T14, and they may be very qualified in what they're doing. They also may have no idea what they're talking about because, like, I will say, having just been a high LSAT taker who would have gotten into a T14, I would have had no business charging for admissions help my first year. It just like you don't know what you're doing because you don't even know why you got in. You could have gotten in despite your essays, not because of them. But people,
Hmm.
it's literally correlation causation, and people have such Dunning Kruger about law school admissions where they learn just a little bit more than they're like other pre-law buddies, and now they assume they're the expert, and they start an Instagram theme page posting about LSAT advice or giving it's tough, and it's like, oh my God, you actually don't know what you're talking about. Which is not,
Yeah, like sometimes you'll never know why you get in. Like sometimes the wind blew the right way, like
yeah,
either for getting in or not getting in. You know what I mean? It kind of can cut both. I mean, sometimes it's clear why some person wouldn't get in, but and again, a lot of times we can solidly predict if you're likely to or not, right? But ultimately, you'll never really know what might be the difference maker.
yeah, and until you have the sample, because I did missions for free with LSAT kids I liked for, I'm trying to think about how long I did this for. Maybe how long did this go for? Like 2 years. I had like 5 people I liked, and we just did it for free. I just worked with them. And I learned so much in terms of, I'd say inclinations I thought would work that didn't. And you start to see what worked and what doesn't after doing it, but not from a sample of one, from a sample of like a dozen. And even that's a pretty
Mhm.
small sample. I learned so much more having a much bigger sample this past year where I don't remember. I think I worked with 18 people. I could be spitballing. I'm working with way fewer people this year, mostly because I don't want to. So don't email me if you're curious. It's just unless I know you, it's not happening. So that's my sales pitch for my admissions consultant. But it's annoying. It's really time intensive to do. Like it's a lot of effort. So I don't do it unless I like want to help the person. And I still charge. Like it's not like a for funsies. But also like it's just not like even I don't know. Sometimes people will pay you and they just like assume they own you. It's like I don't have to take your money. Like I refunded a kid for LSAT class once because he just got really annoying with email, like lippy in terms of like condescension. He's just like,
Mm.
I'd LSAT prep elsewhere. Here's your money. Like have fun. Like good luck. And I don't know. It's fun. I mean, we won't get down that route. But have you ever had to fire a client or a tutor or tell someone to kick rocks?
Um, well,
And you don't have to share
there's
it. You don't want.
no, but I think you and I have discussed this previously. There's that one person who I was really close to doing so. I don't know if you remember, but we can talk about that later. But
Yeah, I actually don't know. For those of you that don't know, Madeline and I, we have a decent amount of, I'd say, cross-pollination of people that meet both of us, partly because they might listen to this podcast. They might run into us on Instagram where we both have decent sized followings. And so we end up, and then further, the people that reach out to one person are likely to reach out to another just because some of these people just, they view talking to us as studying instead of actually just studying, which is always amusing. And we run into a lot of those same people. So I mean, it's funny actually that if you talk to all the LSAT people on Instagram, we probably all know like the same 20 people that just kind of orbit forever. And for what's worth, they're not listening to the podcast because these people don't put effort in. And this actually requires like listening, which is, and if they are listening, they're not hearing this because they're not listening. So, hey, folks. But cool. Well, I think that's a good amount. Yeah, as a reminder, we have our free session on Wednesday, so come check it out. Also, leave us a like on Apple Podcasts. We have some haters, I'm kidding, leaving our little one-star reviews, which don't get me wrong, I don't really care about because that's part of saying stuff that's not the most normal, is you're going to have people that don't resonate with it, and that's okay. People can have their opinions. But there's a lot of you that listen and not a lot of you that leave reviews. So hit the 5 stars. It takes like 1 second and it really helps us out. So do that. And yeah, if you enjoyed what we talked about today or learned something new, please leave a review or a rating. It really does help us out and helps us reach more people. If you have a question or anything you want talked about in the world of LSAT or law school admissions, you can always email support@heyfuturelawyer.com to get it in the podcast agenda. Just put podcast in the subject and we will talk about it on the show. Alrighty, that's all we have for today. So I will see you all next time.